The horror. My name is Jick. I was 19 years old when something happened that I'll never forget. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. I've never gone through anything like it since. The events of this day will haunt me for as long as I live. Okay, think I've covered all the lines to start a scary story now. Oh wait, no. It was a dark and stormy night. It was a dark and stormy night. There, except scratch that, because it was a bright and clear day. I wanted to buy a pink clockwork mouse, so I went onto the popular internet buying website Waislist, where people can agree to meet up and buy and sell things. That seemed like a good idea. I told someone I wanted to buy their pink clockwork mouse, and he agreed, telling me to come to his rickety old house in the middle of nowhere at 11:30 that night. After a few hours, it was a dark and stormy night. I set off to the house. It was a lot of blocks away. Then I left town, and before I knew it, I was moving along country roads. Then I found it. It looked sketchy. I walked up to the house and began to take note that it looked old and run down. The windows were all boarded up. The walls were grimy and had chunks of stone broken off. I started to get a bad feeling, but I really wanted that pink clockwork mouse, so I kept walking up to the front door. I rang the bell. Nobody answered. "Hello," I shouted. Still no answer. Finally, I tried knocking on the door, only for it to give way completely and collapse to the floor with not even a thud, but with the splintering sound of the door breaking in half on landing. It was as fragile as you could imagine. Strange, I thought. This was all very sketchy. I knew it, but I really wanted that pink clockwork mouse. I then heard a noise. I went inside. It was coming from the basement. I found the steps leading to the basement, a staircase leading to the darkness on the left of the stairs end. I noticed, on reaching the lower stairs, that a thin wire was visible, drawn taut across one of the steps just inches above it. It was meant to trip someone up for sure. I concluded that the homeowner was fond of jolly japes and fun practical jokes, and that I would get along very well with them. This put my mind at ease. Then I heard footsteps. I turned around to the top of the stairs where I heard them. While I looked into the distance, I took photos, and when I looked back at them, there was something terrifying. A little splotch of whiteness at the top right corner of one of the 60 photos that vaguely looked like a ghost after I stared at it for 5 minutes. I entered into the basement. It was pitch black, and in the basement, all I could make out was faint marks. A candle was lit, some others too. They were the only source of light. There was also a doll, and as I passed it, it looked like its head might possibly have turned, maybe, I guess, sort of, well, you can't prove it didn't. Suddenly, I realized that these candles, 5 in all, marked a red pentagram on the center of the room. The red was not just red. It was blood. On each tip of the pentagram star, a small fluffy object was placed, and in the center of the pentagram was a gruesome statue of a badly chiseled donkey. My eyes were transfixed on the crudely constructed piece of plaster, with its infantile color scheme and its blood-red eyes. As I studied the thing and giggled to myself, I heard something that sent chills right down my spine. A voice quietly saying, "Room for one more, honey." And I was so shocked that I began to turn around, only to feel a tremendous pain in the side of my head, and then nothing. I woke up, tied down to a rack on which I was lying. in the center of the dark basement, in the center of the pentagram, with that pathetic little statue at my feet, facing me. Only now did I realize that it was grinning evilly. This was all mega sketchy. I screamed, and a voice screamed back, "Quiet!" Only then did I see that I was surrounded by ghoulish figures wearing black robes, who were so indistinct in the dark, dark room that I could only tell they were there by the swaying of their cloth as they moved or fidgeted. One of them spoke with a droning voice. "We offer this virgin to you, O Twinkleberry, as our fourth sacrifice of the season." Another of the robed figures then wheeled out a tall oval mirror that rolled along the wooden floorboards with many creaks and rumbles, sounded more like the cries of the condemned than a mirror rolling along wooden floorboards. And then the same figure wheeling it, once he had stopped, said, "The time has been nigh, and the time is now, as the pact decrees. On the night of the last sacrifice, the end cake, then shall the great goddess appear before her flock, should one of them chant her name 3 times in front of the mirror of confectionaries." I blurted out a laugh at that, for which the presumably robed cultist behind me gave a fierce slap to my left cheek. The whole room chanted the words "Gory Twinkleberry" once. I remarked that my straps felt rather tight, but the figures just chanted. I then inquired, "Might it be possible, good sirs, to untie me so that I may go to the lavatory?" They agreed, and I left the room and ran for it out of the house, stopping to find the pink clockwork mouse along the way. At least they'd actually left one for me, I thought. I heard them chant "Gory Twinkleberry" a second time as I collected the thing, right before I sprinted out and never looked back. I called the police, but they were useless. I don't know what those Satanists had in mind for me, or why they were lurking there. I returned home and went to bed. That was when I started to hear noises. The phone started ringing. I got a phone call. It was a bunch of strange sounds. Nobody said anything intelligible. The phone went dead shortly after. I dismissed it and went back to sleep again. I woke up in a cold sweat. I didn't know why, but I knew that something was wrong. There was something in the room that shouldn't be. Quickly raising up my torso, I shuddered on seeing a dark figure standing at the foot of my bed, directly facing me. But it was just my bunny-themed dressing gown with glow-in-the-dark whiskers. Then, I heard more sounds coming from below. They subsided, and as I waited with bated breath to hear more, my phone rang again. I answered, and a voice said, "We're coming to get you, Jick Cartridge." That was my full name. I was horrified until I looked at the smartphone screen to see the number, and was horrified even more to see that it was the number of my home phone. The call was coming from inside the house. Then, that was when I heard it. Footsteps coming up the staircase. Slowly. More than one set of footsteps. Many. Then, the nightmare truly went from bad to worse. The doorknob moved. It twisted at first. It was locked and didn't give. Then it rattled. Then the door was banged upon violently. "Ah!" I screamed. I called the police, but they were useless. The door was smashed open, and there were so many figures standing there. The front one had a hacksaw in her hands. A chilling, blood-curdling, demonic voice from behind her screeched, "There, I told you she would be here, mornons. Kill him." The window was fully open, for some reason. I leapt out of it as the figures, men and women, at least 5 of them, sped to where I had just been lying, ripping the bed apart with the bladed weapons each carried. They turned as soon as they could to the window, and I stopped looking and ran. I just ran, not looking behind me to see if they were coming. A shout reached my ears. "We just want to make cakes of you, for you." I was bolting more fastly than a bolt out of bolt on a bolt stay after bolt, bursting, rocketing, flailing my legs as far and fast as my mercifully life frame possibly could. But I still heard them behind. It was so dark. Even as I ran down my town's familiar streets, I could barely see where I was going. What direction was I heading? The bad side of town? Even they would be a welcome sight right now. Anything to save me from these monsters, these human monsters. Although, some of the footsteps behind me sounded more like hooves. "No, Fells, he's over there," a hideous, sickly voice shrieked. I've never heard anything like it in my life, before or since that night. I've never heard anything like its grammar either, but that's exactly what it said. "Get him!" the voice shrieked again. I heard their paces turn into a breakneck run. I heard the kiff of gravel turn to the rustle of thick grass. The rustle of thick grass. I called the police, but they were useless, so I sprung up and ran for it. I made a break for it into the woods, the trees. Where the radiators was I? Not in town. The countryside, the open roads. I didn't know, and at this time, my mind wasn't foreknowing. As my heart pounded nearly out of my chest, and the sweat flooded out of me, my mind was blown. All I knew was there were massive trees all around me, and it was still dark, very dark. Just then, I heard a terrible howl. I'd never heard anything like it in my life. I had to ignore it. My life was in danger, and I was too terrified to do anything. That was when I turned on my flashlight. What I saw next would stay with me for the rest of my life. There, 10 feet in front of me, in the middle of the wide dirt path between the trees, was a human female figure. It had long black hair covering its face and drooping down to its waist, and it was wearing a white blood-stained dress. I shouted, "Could you be any more stark, you stupid ghost? Talk about unoriginal. They should have creativity lessons at Ghost Academy," I further quipped while retrieving my pocketed pink clockwork mouse. "Crumbs! Japanese horror movies become popular, and suddenly you hair metal wannabe ghost girls are a dime a dozen." With the mouse's gear twisted, I put it on the ground, and it chased the banshee away. My knowledge that ghosts despise clockwork mice may well have saved my life from whatever it was going to do to me. Unfortunately, my inexplicable cocky outburst was loud enough to attract the attention of the cultists, and I heard them shout, all at once, and definitely made out the words, "He's over there." I ran and ran onto the road. I couldn't believe my luck when I saw headlights rapidly approaching on the distant road. I waved to it in the middle of the road, and then, thinking that was unsafe, I leapt to the side of the road and stuck my arm out, making the hitchhiking motion with my thumb. The car stopped beside me and lowered its window. Before I could say a word, however, The 21-year-old woman at the wheel, at least I assume that was her age, said, "Do you think I was born yesterday, idiot? If I take you in, you'll slash my throat out or something." I pleaded desperately, saying, "No, I'm being attacked myself. Please save me." "Take a hitchhike, sicko!" The car abruptly raced off, before suddenly reversing back to the same position a few seconds later, at which point she added, "From someone else, not me." And then she rocketed off again. Her car turned into a ghost as it drove off. When the car moved off camera, it revealed figures bolting towards me from the forest on the other side of the road, the same forest I myself had just fled. I don't know why it didn't reveal them the first time the car drove off 5 seconds earlier, but it didn't. My worst fears were realized. They had knives, meat cleavers, saws of all stripes, hacksaw, chainsaw, you name it saw. I shouted, "Please don't kill me!" The 7 men and women all shouted back, "No thanks!" My master plan of asking the psychopathic blood cult murderers not to kill me having failed, I ran off the road and into the massive cornfield that stretched out on all sides but that of the road. The sky seemed even blacker and the atmosphere eerier in this field than anything else had been before. There was a scarecrow in the field, and it looked like its head might possibly have moved. That was when I froze in horror as a man walked out from behind the scarecrow, wielding a bloody machete. He said, "I was gonna hitchhike off that woman, you little pest! You ruined everything!" I protested, "Hey, I didn't mean it." But he just ran at me with the machete. Everybody was out for me, Satanists coming from the road, mad hitchhiker scarecrow from the other side. I turned right and ran eastward, but horror of horrors, a flying saucer, or UFO, appeared out of nowhere in the sky above. A conical rainbow-flashing beam came down from its bottom, expanding as it reached the ground. A generic 1950s B-movie alien appeared in its light, and the spacecraft immediately began shooting lightning blasts randomly around the cornfield from its ray guns. The grounded alien whipped out an alien gun and telepathically told me, "I don't come in peace, I come in war!" There was only one direction left to run in, and barely any time to start in it with all 3 sides closing in. Satanists, Scarecrow Man, and aliens. Westward on the field, after I had run with all I had for 47 seconds, I saw a cabin that had somehow appeared to my vision an acre ahead and right, even though I'd known there was nothing around when I looked earlier, or I thought. That cabin surely shall be home to a good person who will help me, I thought to myself, and so I made for it. An old black woman was rocking back and forth on a rocking chair on the rickety wooden porch. As she saw me making for her, she angrily shouted, "Holy mackerel, boy, were you born yesterday? Were you evil? Just keep running!" I didn't have time to disagree, and just then I caught sight in the darkness of a window a crazy-faced, thick-bearded man with a giant gleaming axe, grinning horribly at me. He hollered, "Yeah, she's right, kid." His equally horribly grinning wife poked her head in from the side and shouted, "There's a police station just 5 miles down the way, all right?" I ran, and the lot of them saw the menagerie of stock horror enemies coming after us. The axeman said, "What in tarnation? Is that Frankenstein chasing after him? And a 1950s alien?" As he listed my pursuers, his wife said, "Boy, he's really got his hands full." It was a miracle none of my assailants had caught me, since you never outrun the bad guys in horror stories. But that's what I was doing. I ran and ran until I had made it to the police station, just beside the field. When I entered that decrepit-looking, old stone-walled pile of blue bricks, I rang the bell and screamed. A policeman came in from behind the counter. I shouted to get guns and protect me, and described the various monsters that were after me. He rolled his eyes and started walking back out of the room, palming me off and saying, "Get home, prankster." "No, I'm serious," I said. "No, I'm serious," I wailed. The policeman responded, "Yeah, and so am I!" He snapped back, and suddenly he put on the most alarming evil grin. His head began turning right around in a 360-degree motion, and after one complete rotation, he shouted, "I am a demon!" The police really were useless. I ran out of the station, but a second out of the door, I was frozen in shock as lightning from the alien spaceship struck the cemetery in the police station's garden. I had begun to run again when my blood ran cold on seeing hands erupting from their graves and clutching the earth above them. The dead were rising, and with horrifying speed, so much that I already caught sight of some escaping and staring at me. One was even a clown, because there has to be a clown. I blustered my terrified self back to the cornfield and continued running, the monster armada being mere tens of feet away. Just then, a turquoise flash came out from the UFO that was still blasting left, right, and center. A raucous howl accompanied the flash, bizarrely. And then, everyone disappeared. All the cultists, the hitchhiker, the grounded alien, the policeman demon, and the assortment of universal horror monsters that had joined in the chase without my notice, including Dracula and the creature from the Black Lagoon. The UFO was the only pursuant that remained, and yet even it had stopped firing its ray cannons. I slowed and stopped on realizing what had happened. Turning, I peered up at the UFO's garish, rotating lights. It was far off, but not far enough for comfort, and I was on the verge of resuming my mad scramble when it whirred around and took off into space. I couldn't believe it. The aliens must have found enough specimens to satisfy themselves, I vehemently assured myself. Sutpid occults, if you are wanting something done's right, you are haves to do it yourself. It was that voice, that horrible, horrible screeching voice, that horrible, horrible screeching voice from the demon that had bade the cultists to kill me. I did not turn to see it, for I had already started running before it got out its second word. The voice seemed distant, but screamed so loudly that the beast might as well have been at my back. I ran and ran. The grass turned to gravel. Or was it stone? Pebbles? Bark? I don't know. My mind was in a flurry, as was I. I tear your guts out. I'll prepare the end cake with my own claws. Louder. It was louder. Shulking meet your fate, Mort. I made it out. I made it out all those months ago. And here I am, telling this story. What an experience. My life will never be the same again. And thank God Almighty, nothing like this has ever happened to me again. It must help that I moved to another country, since my chase ended with me scrambling onto an unmarked departing boat just as it was leaving. But some nights, as I lie restless in bed, clutching my pink clockwork mouse to my chest, I can still hear the thuds of those cultists on my door, and the terrible voice of that demoness who shrieked at them to hunt me down. I pray I never encounter them again, and I pray that no one will ever, ever have to read such a cheesy horror story as this again. Hello?
Hello, Mr. X?
Ah, Rob. How's things this fine evening?
Oh, fine, fine, yes. Yeah, yeah, my talking George Bush doll, yeah, it's trying to kill me. Mm.
Ah, that time of year again, is it?
Yeah, but I'm not exactly sure what to do about that, but see, it's sort of blocking the door.
Best to just stand your ground and fight back. I mean, the worst that can happen is it'll horribly kill you, you know.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Well, I'll see you tomorrow then.
Bye then.